Welcome to another sololevelingarise video. So, I just finished doing the guild boss ranking, and there was one mistake that I forgot to change, and I was able to figure something out too beforehand that actually make a character who I had a little bit lower than what people expected happen to be probably the strongest guild boss character in the game. And so we're gonna go over on who that is, and then we're gonna go over the build, and then we're also gonna go over just general game plan on how you want to do when you're fighting the dragon. So first, let's start with Jinwoo, because every team's gonna have a Jinwoo. And sadly, one thing that I really dislike about this game at the moment, especially for guild boss, Jinwoo has been dropped down to a support role for guild boss because his weapons, his DPS weapons, are not strong enough to out damage what his support weapon gives all the other hunters, sadly. So to start, one thing you gotta do, make sure. So one thing also, is gonna be very expensive because his build and then all your other hunters build are gonna be different compared to all the other content. So just have gold every week to keep changing your artifact set, sadly. So starting off, make sure you have every single point that you have on intelligence. Cooldown reduction is gonna be the most important thing for Jinwoo, because the two weapons that you really want to use with him are Moonshadow and the Grimoire. So Moonshadow increases the enemy's damage taken by 45%. As well as if you have Dark, that's also an additional 45%. The only Dark you have right now for your team is going to be Libora. And with the Lolays coming, I think this is going to be very strong for that whenever they arrive. So you're going to have a full team of probably Dark that's going to take advantage of the Moonshadow. Plus your Shadow Steps. When you hit them with that, it just activates it. Plus they take 15% more damage from everyone when the time slowing effect is active, which is active with this as well as with the Shadow Step. So really strong. This is probably the best weapon for Jinwoo for the guild boss. Your second weapon, Grimoire. Grimoire inflicts your deep corrosion, which is a 24% weakness damage taken. So for this one, A1 is really good. You don't need anything else maybe except for A4, because the boss is not going to be frozen, so that's not going to matter. And then for Moonshadow, A1 is actually great, but if you can get that up to A5, that's going to be perfect. If you don't have Grimoire, an alternative that you can run is definitely the Frostbite Falchion, which is it has its own erosion at 12% that stacks up to 2 times, so 24%. And other than that, every other weapon is not really worth it, except for maybe the Huntsman if you don't have anything, because I think do you need to be A5? I think you might need to be yeah, you need to be A5 for Huntsman to be good, and that's awful. So the only two weapons that are really strong are these right now. Everything else is just DPS, and that's actually not that strong for Jinwoo. Artifact set, Burning Blessing. That's gonna be your most important set. So because it gives your party, at least the one who, let me see, the one that's your main party, which is your, I think, Team A, that's going to give them a 20% damage boost, and that's going to be amazing. So for skills are also very easy. We're going to be running Vacuum Wave for that increased damage taken. And then we're also going to be running Ascension Break, so you can get more power gauge and your ultimate will be on cooldown faster. So with that, let's go talk about his Blessing Stones. Reawakening for more cooldown. The higher level that is, the better. You can do Bloodlust because it decreases the enemy's defense, so that's solid. We Are One is great, especially since this buffs your support hunters. So your team is most likely going to have 2 of the same type. 3 is kind of pushing it, because at least the way we have it right now, we can't optimize it with 3, but 2 is perfect. Maybe when the Dark team comes around, maybe that's going to be better. For your 4th, Blessing Stones. If you're running out of mana, Demon Slayer is great. But if your mana is fine, I like Speed, just because this can let you just get around, try to just the movement speed helps you just maneuver yourself so you can always be in front of the dragon. If you don't want to run speed, swiftness is good. One extra dash, pretty much the exact same thing. So that's just a preference. Either one is fine. Everything else is not really worth it. The dragon doesn't get broken except once, so Pulverize is actually pretty bad here. You don't have Shadow, so that's that. That's for Sung Jinwoo. Now let's talk about Hunters. Sadly, I already did my runs of recording this. I did the gameplay first, and I can't access where you can have all the teams, so we're gonna have to go through this. The first team is gonna be your most important team because this is also the one that's getting the Sung Jinwoo buff. What I like to run in here is Gogun-hee, Cha-hae-in, as well as Maylin Fisher. Maylin, I always like to have Maylin on the first team because of her skill 1. When you have her duped out, the Power Lash, when it gives your entire team some power gauge, I think when you have it at 8-3. So the power gauge really helps Sung Jinwoo get that ultimate up way more often. I've tried some other runs without Maylin. I think you ult maybe once or twice less, 1 or 2 times less than when you have Maylin. Plus, she buffs core damage as well as attack and defense, which is what the chairman Gogun-hee loves. He is an amazing core attack DPS, and he scales on defense, which Maylin buffs really, really strong. And then Cha is just your... She ends up being like the highest DPS for most of my runs, which is kind of crazy. So, build-wise, for Gogun-hee, Burning Greed is amazing for him because of the crit rate buff for Cha. And then for Cha, this is going to be your typical DPS build. You're going to want a 4-piece Burning Curse as well as with an Expert. Try to get your attack to around 20k and higher, just to maximize your score. Sadly, my crit damage is lower here, but we can't sadly we can't choose what gears we have. So if you can optimize that where you can have this around 180 and you can have this around, just flip these around, and that will be perfect. So that's my first team. And then before we talk about Maylin, let's talk about the second team, the builds for Maylin. So the second team is usually Amamiya, Hansemi, as well as Choi Jonghyun. That's usually my second team. And for Amamiya, the normal build is the exact same. This is just that. Your stats, 21,000 for me, 13% and 171. And then for Hansemi, I have the Angel in White as well as the Slips Blessing. This, I think, is gonna be one of your best artifact set to run, because this buffs your elemental damage weakness by a total of 15%. And I think that's the highest buff that we have that gives to the entire party. Because elemental weakness damage, when the dragon is weak to every element, that's just a 15% damage increase. And if we go to the artifact set, other than Burning Blessing, which you're going to be running on Sung Jinwoo, but they're not going to be getting it because this is the second team, I think that's the highest. You can't run Outstanding Connection because you don't tag in. And then it's just Burning Blessing or Sylph's Blessing. And Sylph's Blessing is more... It has more uptime. It's permanent, pretty much. So, and then Angel of the White is just buffing the damage of Amamiya by 8%. Now, one thing I made a mistake with my ranking. I put Hansemi in S tier. That was a mistake. Hansemi is actually probably the best hunter for Guild Boss. And there's only one reason for that too, other than all her kits stacks up. But there's one thing that makes her the best for Guild Boss. And that's her skill 2. Her skill 2 puts that giant zone that heals your MP as well as gives you a shield. Giant Meadow works for every party, not just whatever party she's in. So when that zone is active, everyone is healing their MP by every 3 seconds, as well as gaining a shield every 3 seconds. There's an artifact set that deals and increases your damage with a shield. And that artifact set, you guys know, it's been out for a long time. It's been talked about as one of the worst artifact set when it first came out, which is crazy because now it's probably the best artifact set for Guild Boss, and that's the Guardian set. So the Guardian set says, when a team member activates a shield, it increases their individual damage dealt by 10%. What this means is that when anyone in their party gets a shield, they get a 10% damage buff. And Hansemi in one party gives a shield for everyone. So everyone can activate Guardian as long as you have one person in your team has a Guardian. So you just get a permanent 10% damage increase. And why that's crazy is because if we look at Angel and White, Angel and White is an 8% damage increase to one person. Tilt's Blessing is 15%. And that's a 4-piece. A 4-piece Burning Blessing is 10%, which has a cooldown. And then Solid Analysis, I think, is 5% attack bonus. I mean, not Solid, Noble Sacrifice, I think, is 5%. I don't have any. Oh, that's in the wrong set. And I think Noble is 5%, right? No, 8%. So it just lets you use Guardian on everyone. And just gives everyone just a permanent 10% damage boost, which is crazy. And also, what's another thing that's insane is that every team has a backup shield. Like, if we look at the first team, we had Goga and He who gives a shield. In this one, Hansemi gives a shield. And then Choi Jung-in has the Guardian set for me with the Burning Curse. I think I already talked about in a ranking how he's probably going to be the second best now because of his weapon. This stacks with Shadow Step with the defense decrease. So you're just going to have stack up defense decrease on the enemy, and that's going to be amazing. Plus, he can do solid damage if you have him A5, but his weapon prioritizes that to A5. So with that, just Hansemi is amazing. If you have Hansemi, please, if you don't have Hansemi and you want to rank higher in Guild Boss, pull for Hansemi. At least one copy. He's going to buff Amamiya by a crazy amount, as well as that. Now the third team. Third team that I like to do is I like to do Alicia, Lee Bora, and then Min Byung-gu for some sustainability. So Alicia, she provides a shield. So she's the one that she's your backup. And then we have Min, who just gonna keeps everyone alive. He has the Guardian set as well as the slips, which is gonna be amazing. And then his ultimate is just gonna buff off Alicia. And then Lee Bora for the charm. Just something simple, plus she does crazy damage. I think mine is doing an average of like 200 million, which is pretty insane for not a main DPS. And then I don't even have her weapon max. If I have her weapon max plus her stats a little higher, and I don't have perfect set for her, normally I would probably want Burning Curse plus Expert as well on her. And yeah, she's gonna be so much crazier when the two dark character comes out in the future. That's probably gonna replace this third team, especially if one of them helps the team survive. But worst comes to worst, Alicia is probably gonna be replaced by one of them, especially if one of them's a DPS. So that's the team, and let's just go over the gameplay and let's see how we can increase our score. The first thing we want to do is Shadow Step, and then after that, follow this rotation of skills, which is Vacuum Wave, into Grimoire, into Moonshadow full cast, and into Ascension Break. You don't have to fully cast your other skills, you can just cancel that the moment it hits and you get the debuff up. And then make sure you always run around and get in front of the dragon so you can get an easy Shadow Step. Anytime he attacks, your Shadow Step should always be up. And then when your ultimate is up, always cast that so you can get your Burning Blessings to your Hunter team. So I think, what's my first team in here? I think this is the light team plus Malin Fisher, who's just going to give us a lot of power gauge so we can have so we can ult more. And then here, since he turned around, we have a couple of extra seconds until he attacks. And then with that breath, if you miss that first hit, you can follow the head when he walks, and then you just follow where the breath is happening and then dodge that. You can get a Shadow Step from that too. So good for us. The best one is gonna be his hand swipe, because you can have that red marking in there and it takes a while, so it gives you time to go around in the front. Make sure you're not casting anything when he attacks. And then when he walks like this, normally you reset, because this will lose you a lot of time. Because look at him, he's just walking around not doing anything. But I just use everything here just so we can get some extra damage. Thankfully he swiped when everything was already used, so we can have more shadow steps in here. I think the uptime of the shadow step is about 100% at this point if you can hit everything. So with this one, I slowed it down, and I think I have enough time to get that one. So one thing about here that's gonna make everyone mad is that this dragon will try his best not to face you. Like in there, he just out of nowhere targeted someone to the right without any animation for it. Luckily, it was close enough. Sadly, in this one I missed because I ran out of dashes, so my shadow step is kind of low here. But we have another defense reducer in Choi Jong-in, which is good. There, I don't know how I got that, but we got it for the shadow step. And try not to spam everything. Try to time all of your debuffs at the same time so you can get some maximum damage. And anytime you get that, that's an easy shadow step. And so far, this is about where you want. About 1 minute. If you can be around boss range 7, that'll be perfect. And Gogun Hee, if you have him at A5 or maybe whatever one that gives you the almighty break on your ult, I think A3, he can solo break the dragon. So you don't need to bring in any additional breaker for that. Just so we can have more damage over here. He still had some defense. So see, he's always going to turn and try to get away from you. And then the only thing you can do is follow. Just make sure you follow the head. That's what the speed blessing stone is really good for in here. It lets you follow. So getting 200 million in the last 20 seconds is actually crazy over here. Thankfully, he gave us one final chance, and we still have our ult. So we have one more good burst over here, so we can see how much damage we end up. And here are the final results. 2.1 billion damage, which is good enough for Rage Count 8. In my opinion, Rage Count 8 is going to be probably the maximum for most players who are not Krakens that have everything at 810. If you have everything at 810, you're probably going to be reaching Rage 9 with that. So Rage 8 is actually very good. And that's the damage breakdown. Chaein at 5.7 million, which is insane. Higher than Amamiya at 488 million. Amamiya sometimes will be hitting in the 600 million or below 400. So she's just out there. Gogun, he's a consistent 400 million damage for me. And then Alicia is pretty solid with 300 million. She didn't even have the proper support. In the next patch, she's probably going to be replaced by a dark team. And yeah, hopefully this helps you guys increase your rage count. So with that, if you guys liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.